Hi, everyone, and welcome to Active Travel Cafe today, 24th of February. And I am delighted to let you all know that our guest speaker this evening is our founder, Brian Deegan. He's popped back in to talk to us about Active Travel England critical safety issues. We'll get on to that soon. But firstly, I'm sure you would all like to share your news. So, if you'd like to put your hand up or give us a nudge in the chat or the Q&A if you've got some news, we shall get started. Right, H, you've had your hand up for quite a while, so do you want to jump in there?
Yeah, I'll fire in about three things. First of all, I've caught up with Oliver Coppard, who's gone into South Yorkshire. And there's a great discussion going about bikes on trams. Now, we actually gave them a paper about that about 10 years ago. And Sheffield, Manchester, um, uh, Croydon, and Birmingham all were early adopters of tram systems. In 1999, I had to rewrite the 1870 Tramways Act to get the standards right, and after which we did do it properly. But there have been some issues there. Your potholes, been into a debate with Potholes UK people. Tarmac does not stick to steel. And there's a huge number of steel frames for gully grids, uh, valve covers, chamber covers, where the tarmac slumps down, cracks, and falls away from the steel. There is a solution, but you've got to build them properly. And I have a 180-year-old pavement in the street just about a kilometre from here, which has still got no potholes, as good as the day it was built, because it was built properly. And I'm quite keen to see that we get this stuff done properly instead of the patch repairs, because Mark actually went into some detail of this, but we could go in further. Finally, some thoughts on London. I see pedicabs have been taken on board, but in Glasgow, we actually had the most successful thing, a free pedicab service. It was paid for by the branding on the pedicab and the fact that the rider was a mobile hawker for the cafe or the business that was advertised on the pedicab. Having free public transport means you get no dwell time delays with boarding, so it works faster. So you have free buses, free pedicabs circulating in the city centre. People could just get on and go somewhere for the very short journeys they need to make. And it is
Okay.
perfectly fundable. Okay?
Thanks, H. And absolutely your description of the tarmac not sticking to steel is exactly why I have bruises and a sprained wrist, because that's exactly what I hit. Thank you for your news. Okay, Bob, you're up.
Thanks. Super quick. I mentioned the death of my old buddy David Dansky last time. There's going to be a memorial critical mass for him if you're in London on Friday, this Friday, meeting on the South Bank at 6:40 for 7:30 off. Okay, that's it.
Thanks, Bob. Could you also put that in the chat? That might help for people to just copy those details down. And I hope it goes well. Thank you. Sophie, your news, please.
Thank you. I think I recognise quite a lot of you, but for those who don't know, I'm in the campaigns team at Cycling UK. So some exciting news from us is we've launched some manifestos today for the elections in Wales and Scotland. So I'll stick the link in the chat for anyone who wants to have a look at that. And we will be doing an action to help people contact candidates once they've all been announced. And I know quite a few of you have local elections in England as well. So just sharing something that might be helpful. We've got sort of elections toolkit for cycle campaigners with just some helpful things for thinking for ideas of what to do, how to find the right the right people, ideas for kind of doing a campaign stunt or getting a story in the news and that sort of thing. So hopefully that's helpful if you've got elections coming up and want to do something to get candidates on board.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Sophie. And I guess I should do a disclaimer that I'm also a Cycling UK trustee and got a sneak preview of this morning, and it looks great. So I encourage everybody to go and click. And also, we've had a few active travel cafe sessions on approaches to election campaigning. So if anyone is looking for resources, we've got a few in our archive as well. But thank you very much to Cycling UK and Sophie and your team for creating those resources for everyone. I'll be sharing them with my team. Brilliant. Someone else who knows all about election campaigning, Roger, what's your news today?
Thanks. It is also about election campaigning, so
I
ties
had
together
a
very nicely.
feeling.
Yeah. So yeah, Roger Geffen, Low Traffic Future, formerly a colleague of Sophie's at Cycling UK, but now Low Traffic Future, kind of supporting all aspects of reducing car dependence. So yeah, we decided to focus on local campaigning last year. Then we started preparing for all the local elections that then got postponed and then got unpostponed again. So it's been a bit of a roller coaster. So yeah, we've also got a toolkit, and I will post a link to that in the chat. This is much more about sort of, the wider agenda of which active travel is a part of, reducing car dependence. We are So I'll ping that link round. We're also doing some specific work with local campaigners in Greater Manchester, where they've not only got local elections in the 10 boroughs of Greater Manchester. It's not the mayor of Greater Manchester, the 10 boroughs, but they've also got a local transport plan that is up for consultation, and it's surprisingly disappointing, to be honest. So we've been working with the likes of Friends of the Earth Greater Manchester, Walk Ride Greater Manchester, and a few others to come up with a campaign, a better plan for GM. So those of you who are in Greater Manchester, fingers, I'll ping round a link to the Greater Manchester campaign for those who are there. We'll be doing a bit of a sort of public launch of that in a week's time. But if anybody else is now looking to do something similar, to kind of mobilise a campaign at rather short notice, given that all the uncancelled elections that have just recently happened, then please do get in touch, and I'll ping contact details and links in the chat. Thanks.
Brilliant. Thanks so much, Roger. I'm thinking maybe next week we should just do a little collection of here's all the different resources and things that are out there for election campaigning, and we can put it all together. Cycling UK, Active Travel England, Transport Action Network. If anyone else has got helpful things around election campaigning, bring them next week and let's put a little collection together. Thank you. Andy, your news.
Hello, yeah, a couple of quick ones. One of them's pothole related. So here in
My
Wiltshire,
wrist twinges every time I hear the word pothole.
I've been pressing Wiltshire Council for 3 years, more than 3 years, to actually consider cyclists, impacts of cyclists in their pothole evaluations. They haven't done it, and only today they've started resurfacing a road that had no potholes, whereas just around the corner there's one with really bad, dangerous potholes. I've had a couple of cyclists that near me nearly come off on that pothole. So the challenge for that one. But the good news is I'm also part of the Wiltshire Cycling Network Alliance, and we're pressing Martin Smith, who's the cabinet member for highways, to introduce a new portfolio holder for active travel. And hopefully we will get a good response on that one. But that's what we're trying to do here in Wiltshire.
Brilliant. Andy, are you aware that Cambridgeshire County Council has brought in a new pothole prioritisation or road maintenance hierarchy, and that is taking into account active travel networks and the impact of potholes on cycling. So there is
I was not aware.
case there. Feel free to send CamCycle an email. I'm sure we can send you some links that might help you there.
Brilliant. I'll do that. Thank you.
No problem. Okay, last call for any news. Anyone? As always, I'll say we only had one woman give us some news. So has anyone else got some news out there? Not our normal faces. Just checking no one's waving at me. I can't see you if you are. Okay, right. Right, we're ready. We are at 100 attendees now, which means we must be pretty keen for our guest speaker. So, without any further ado, I would like to introduce Brian Deegan, the original founder of Ideas with Beers, which we now call Active Travel Cafe. Brian also has a day job as the Director of Inspections at Active Travel England, and he's here today to outline ATE's new route check tool that helps identify critical safety issues like potholes for walking, wheeling, and cycling. Brian, I think you know what you're doing, so I officially hand over to you.
Well, yeah, if you remembered the old days of Ideas with Biz, you'd know I definitely don't know what I'm doing and never did. So, well done on doing it professionally since. Yeah, I'm going to drop a few disclaimers as any good like a civil servant would before they start talking publicly. I'm not getting any slides. I'm going to start a bit of a discussion and I'm going to tell some long meandering stories and then really give you an opportunity to ask any questions on it. They're not that new and it's the first I've heard of Bob's bombshell. So the first person I'm going to call out is Dave Dansky and his role in this for the past 20 years. Whenever I've had a collision, a crash on my bike, Roxy. Like I always talked it through, like in intense detail with David Dansky. What did I do wrong? I did this and I signaled that, and this happened. So it was definitely one of the inspirations behind putting this thing together. So I thought I'd take a few minutes to talk about the history of these things coming together and where they actually sit and what it actually means. I'm assuming, looking at the people who are on this call, that you all kind of know about it, and you all know that there's some new visuals to help you explain it to others on the Active Travel England website, and like the critical issues. Oh, there we go. There's a thing to look at. Check
Brian,
out the
I would
Active Travel England.
assume as you entry level knowledge, we have all sorts. So could you give us a bit of background on it? If
Oh
that's
yeah, okay. All right then. Yeah, we'll jump it. Well, definitely. There's your homework then. If this is the first you've heard of it, to get on the Active Travel England website and look at all the visuals we did to try and make it easier for people to understand what these things are and why they're important. So I'll go through a little bit of background from my side of it. So yes, going back in the day when I used to know the people of Bob Davis and Roger Gaffin, who were like giving me lots of grief running the London Cycle Network, saying why you're doing it all wrong. What's the matter here and there? And I, at one stage, as the project manager, like one of the project managers on that project, started getting really into road safety auditing. But it was by doing that I realized that there wasn't a great deal in road safety audits that actually benefited cyclists. And I was like, well, what's missing? What things would we want to pass on to road safety auditors to actually look at things that were important for cyclists? It seemed like a whole kind of missing area. At the time, collisions involving cyclists were, I've got to put this sensitive, but it always seemed a little bit like cyclists swerved. Always seemed like the descriptions were all erring towards the fault of the cyclist being random and dangerous enough to actually get on wheels and actually ride on the road. There was this kind of, so it was really hard to unpick from the safety stats, the stats 19 stuff, what exactly was going on. But we need to address this properly. So the approach I took was, one, to think about what it was like when I was riding around. One of the people riding around. That's why people like David Dansky were super useful, because you could do a completely forensic analysis of your collision and go, well, why is nobody else seeming to do this kind of forensic analysis? So I started to think, well, what are the main types of collision that happen to cyclists, and can we unpack what conditions could be on the ground that could lead to them? What kind of events we need to, I saw Roger dropping the Swiss cheese of road safety comment already in the chat. How many of these holes needed to align to actually make the thing? And for people that don't know what the Swiss cheese of road safety is, it's kind of, you need many variables to coincide to make a collision happen. So on let's take Roxy's one. Maybe it had potholes. Maybe she was distracted. Maybe the weather was bad. Maybe it was a stressful road environment where she had to think about the cars. Maybe people were stepping out on their phones. Lots and lots of things that will all have to line up to actually make the point where you didn't see it and you hit it and you fall and there's a collision. So it's well, we know there's lots of variables involved. And that always makes for a complex model when you try to break it down. But if anybody knows me, they'll know that I love complexity. In fact, my team who have taken this system on and run with it and actually know it better than I do, and I think you had one of my team members on a few months ago actually explaining this in a bit more methodical way, and I kind of say to them, I pass on. But anyway, I like really complex models, but like any model where you've got more than 3 variables is kind of scientifically a bit tough to test. So we're like, well, we started breaking down what are all the factors that could lead to it. There's so many human factors and power constraints and vehicles and surfaces. So what's the one that makes a collision? What can you do about it? So it's difficult to approach it in that kind of scientific way. So we look the other way around and go, well, what type of collisions are we getting? Let's have a look at them. And we did some research when I was at Transport for London. Well, there was a major bit of research looking at the fatalities and what caused them in really forensic detail that Loughborough University did. That was really important. And we were putting together the Cycle Safety Action Plan at the time. And that had all the main types of cycling collision. And we also did like a little diagrams for what caused them. So with my background in collision investigation and road safety audit, I thought we'll get into this. So we looked at the main types of one. Now, the number one cause of fatalities, which probably won't be a surprise to many people here, but it was the left hook. That was the number. It wasn't the number one cause of collisions. That was the right hook. But the number one cause of fatalities was the left hook. And at the point where we're looking at this, people on this call will remember, and for the newbies, I'll talk. We had like a spate. There was 3 fatalities of left hook at the same junction in a couple of weeks. Like a really, really tricky situation. So it became really quite tricky, and there was lots of people at TfL that like stopped cycling and were just kind of terrified. I thought we've got to tackle this. So I started looking at it in a kind of perverse way. And here's the perverse way you'd like think about. Well, if I wanted to make a left hook involving a cyclist, what would I design? This is like it's a tricky way of getting your head around it. But like I will say, for anybody that's ever worked in road safety, it is a grim world. You have to think about things in different ways. It's a bit like when you see those detective shows and they're getting in the minds of the murderer, as it were. You kind of need a little bit of that back, and it's tricky waters because it's upsetting. And around about the time I would be meeting the families of the victims and then meeting people who'd lost limbs, and we're talking through it and we're trying to get to the bottom of it. So it's a tricky emotional situation. So anyway, if you do my like perverse experiment. And for those that have the stomach for this sort of thing and want to get into it, it's something that's worth thinking about as well in your daily practice. Like, look at the types of collisions that are happening in your area. What would you do to make that happen? If those conditions are there, how many of those variables can you remove to start blocking up your Swiss cheese and stop it from happening? That's the kind of basics. So I was thinking, okay, what would I design? Now, I'm a design engineer by trade. So what would I design if I wanted a left hook to happen? Okay, right. Well, I'd want a really, really strong left turn for traffic. Let's say like there's 5 to 10,000 of them turning left. So, I mean, every cycle is going to be like 30, 40 turning left across. Okay, so we've got a good stream of traffic doing that. Okay, well, where do I want to put the cyclists? Here's like a shout out to David Dansky. Not on the near side if he were following bikeability rules, but if I wanted that left hook to happen, I'd stick them on that near side on the approach. So I liked it. And then I'd make sure when they got to the lights that they were all released at the same time. They were held for ages, and then they got a green light, and the majority of cyclists wanted to go straight ahead, but they were all fed on that near side, and the majority of vehicles wanted to turn left going across there. I go, yeah, if I want a left hook to happen, you rinse and repeat that cycle every 90 seconds all day in busy areas. I'm probably going to get left hooks. You can see where it's going. What I've just described is a pretty standard arrangement at every traffic signal junction in the UK. You start being perverse and go, well, I know they didn't do it to be perverse. You just weren't thinking of it from a cycling perspective. So you start going through, well, okay, well, what can we do to address that? And we start looking at, okay, well, do ASLs do any good? Like an advanced stop line, putting another stop line in there so cyclists can come through when the traffic's held and they can position themselves in a central position, waiting to go ahead. And excuse me for not having slides of this one, but we're painting pictures in our mind. We've all been creeping up the near side, getting into an ASL, positioning yourself a little bit centrally so you can go ahead when the cars go. And I go, does that help with that? But then when we were looking at the fatalities, a huge proportion of them happened at ASLs with near side feeder lanes. It was like, and then you start overlaying it with the work of others on this call as well. When you look at the blind spots, like, is there a blind spot? I had that conversation with David many times as well. But like, if you look at that blind spot map, where can't the lorries see? It's exactly the shape of a near side feeder to an advanced stop line. So going, actually, we're designing things that take people into the least visible point. So do they really help? And actually, we found that female cyclists were much more likely because they were more likely to come on that near side and actually wait at the stop line. So they're waiting for that point where all the vehicles go off at the same time, which is when the hook happens. So there's a few things we're going, well, the one thing that we do at junctions actually seems to be making it worse. That's what we have to think. It was another variable. It was another hole in the cheese, just to totally labor that analogy. But we're making another hole. We weren't fixing one. I knew this one. So we're like, well, what do we need to do? Then it led to this kind of thinking led to a kind of whole scale evaluation of why we do junctions. I sent consultants all around the world, the likes of Phil Jones and John Dales and a couple of others, and it's called, what are they doing that we're not? What are people doing to tackle that left hook? We tried experiments at the time, like the cycle gate came in, where we effectively metered cyclists so they weren't arriving at that front stop line at the same time as vehicles doing the left. We'd hold them back and make sure that they benefited from some kind of space there. Well, we looked at it, and it was all this kind of protected junction stuff, the kind of hold the left approaches that we went, okay, these seems to be some way of tackling this completely common thing that has given rise to this highest percentage of fatalities. So I'll do a couple more, but that's the kind of approach. What would you do to make it happen? How many of those things can you take out to make it less likely? That's the essence of the critical issue. And when you're looking through the Active Travel England stuff, it said, have you got these conditions? And some of them are a little bit long and a little bit complicated, which is why we've done visuals to help people understand them. But if you've got that, and it's like most of them, in fact, all of them tend to be like standard practice in the UK. So we're pointing out things that other manuals will say, this is how you do it. So you'll see many manuals that will have an advanced stop line with a near side feeder as being a good bit of infrastructure for cyclists. But in fact, you might well be increasing the likelihood of left hooks in that scenario. So do you want to think about it? So that was the approach we took. If I take another one, and and at this stage, I'll say to Roxy, when I start boring people, stop me, because I'll do as many of these as you can handle. But the weirder one was the right hook. Just going, what's the kind of right hook? What causes that? It wasn't as obvious when I was trying to design something to make a right hook happen. Think about it that way. It was a trickier, a thought experiment. But it came down to, okay, let's keep those cyclists on the near side. Got to put them in the least defensive position. Let's have something to suggest that they stay over there. Advisory cycle lanes, can't necessarily guarantee, but they'll really hint that they stay in that space. We'll take them past the side road on the near side, but it's a side road that's single lane dueling for cars. This is the scenario I came up with, single lane duel, and there are many scenarios that meet it, but single lane dueling, it's quite busy. Cyclists come down the near side, quite a queue of traffic. The first car stops to let a right turner cut across. It's this is the hole we needed in the cheese here was to a driver to be nice. That's the kind of sad thing. If a driver sees another driver waiting and they're holding, there's a queue of traffic building up behind him, they've got that kind of social pressure, then go, I'm going to do the right thing here. I'm going to slow down, and I go, off you go, mate. Now, there's enormous pressure then on the driver who's doing the right to go now and say thank you and doff his cap or her cap as they turn into the side road. Now, a cyclist who's coming down the near side, they can't be seen. They're looking for that gap. The gap's been given by the car. The car on that near side is not looking for the cyclist on the near side. So I'm saying this to a bunch of people, and I know you've been on bikes and you'll recognize this scenario. It wasn't an obvious one for us in road safety to pick up. So when I go, okay, that's the one, isn't it? It's people not being seen coming through the near side when someone's cutting across through a gap, and they get across quickly. And we're having that same discussion when we're looking at the pedestrian side of things now with side road zebras. That pressure to do a right across traffic into side roads is a real tricky one to manage safely, because as soon as they got the signal from the other driver, it's a real go. It's more powerful than the green light is. You'll never have a car in a more dangerous position than the one you've been given a green light. Albeit someone giving you the hand signal to go and you're not going could be even worse. They get a lot of pressure there. So we made something where people feel socially pressured to go and go now without checking all the other variables out. So you're starting to get that recipe for the right hook. So we go, okay, yeah, actually, we see that everywhere. Actually, I nearly got taken out 2 weeks ago with that. Yeah, what would we do about that? You start thinking about that one. And then Then there was like things like, well, what if we had a right turn pocket? If a right turn pocket, then someone could wait to do a right turn and the traffic that's going straight ahead could go. So we're removing some of that pressure on the driver, which seems a weird way to tackle a cycling collision. But like the whole game is, what's the driver going to do? How can we mitigate that behavior for the benefit of people walking and cycling? They're just doing a standard thing. How can you reduce that? So we looked, well, will a right turn pocket get? Okay, well, what else would we do to make it visible? What if it was a busy junction and there's quite a lot of people turning right there? We're putting some keep clear markings and extended them beyond the mouth of the junction. So then you've got drivers coming up, they're queuing traffic, they'll hold back. Then that cyclist coming through has got a much better visibility display to the driver that's turning right. They're much more likely to see it. So again, you start like just adjusting all the variables, and that's the key. What the critical safety issues aren't like you have to do that. It's watch out for all these things. If you've got that condition, how many of these variables can you adjust to make it less likely to happen? That's a complicated sentence, but I tried to get everything I've said in the last 20 minutes into one sentence there. That's the kind of essence of it. Should we do another one? Let's do one more. Okay, one more. Thanks for listening to the old timer prattle on about 30 years worth of thinking about this stuff. Okay, let's do the width of a near side lane. Like Trig, you want to talk about this, but like the classic for that, like you're talking like this is the third most frequent type of cycling collision. And like if I'm only doing three, I'm not getting onto the walking ones, but I will finish off just saying where they derive from as well. If we do that like a width for the near side lane, now anybody cycling here, if you're cycling on that near side and the car's beside you, you're in a nice wide lane, fine. Maybe you should listen to the bikeability instructions and get yourself out, but sometimes it's kind of quite comfortable. That's of course you're coming up to a pinch point. Now, like anybody that cycled and survived like more than a couple of weeks will be watching out for pinch points like a hawk. So like there's a pedestrian refuge coming up. You go, okay, look at that. What's happening to the cycle lane? Oh, it's just stopped. It stopped 20 meters before, maybe even 5 minutes before. Or what's happening to the traffic lane? Oh, the centre line markings bringing all the cars over into that space. So the cycle lane stopped. We used to put the end markings to say that, which kind of meant give way. But now it's just stopped and there's no indication. So you've been established on that near side. No one's told you that a car's about to come right over into your space and the car's being led by that centre line over to that position. Now, again, think of it perversely. That's a really great way to make a collision from alongside happen. And again, then you think, well, okay, if that's how we'd make it, how many of those have we got? Oh my God, they're everywhere. You can see why this is happening. So maybe we should think about not doing that. Maybe that refuge can come out. Maybe it can be a zebra crossing instead, and then we don't need like a centre island. Maybe we put a better warning. Maybe you don't establish cyclists in that near side space in the first place. Maybe you make the whole lane narrow, put symbols in the centre so that the position's established. So you're not leading people towards like an issue and not warning them about it. That was the kind of the other key bit about that. So that's really the essence, like unpacking what are all the things, what would you do? And why not do that? Don't do that, and it's less likely to happen. That's the kind of a way of thinking about it. Just on when I finished the cycling one, I thought, oh, we're on to something here. Let's test it all out. And the evidence we've got from looking at it and insisting on this for many years now in schemes is that the collisions have gone down, and we are less likely to get those more severe ones. There'll be other ones that we haven't thought of, that we should have thought of. There'll be some that are stronger than others, and we're doing research into that at the moment. But when I looked at the pedestrian side, there was lots of research being done by Transport Research Authority at the time. They were looking at the main causes of pedestrian collisions. I felt I had a pretty good idea of them as well. So we did that same approach. What would cause it? Can we eliminate it? That whole, well, what's the main cause? It's so frustrating to cross the road that you have to wait so long. So you're going to go, well, what if we shortened the amount of time that people had to wait to cross the road? Does that help? People looking for a gap when there isn't a gap. Crossing between cars because no design line's been met. It was all the same sort of things. Well, I go, well, if I want a pedestrian collision to happen, I'd just put solid cars on both sides of a high street and have shops that you want to crisscross to with no obvious crossing point. Just go, well, yeah, people are going to be crossing in between cars. It's 30 miles an hour. They can't see them pop out. That's the situation I'd make. So if you wanted to avoid that, don't do that. have some gaps in the car so people can see and there's good visibility. So again, that's the way to take it. So they're not meant as a stick. They're meant to point out best practice and good practice that people think of for other modes that can have this knock-on effect for people walking, wheeling, and cycling. That's the reason that we point them out. So that's a little bit of a personal take on them all, but every single one of them I've experienced, and and that's the thing. So there might be stuff that I haven't experienced that comes up, which is why we're always keeping an eye on the stats. Is there a different cause to it? Is there a different reason? And that makes it trickier science, because you are talking the science of multiple variables, and as soon as you get 4 or 5 variables, like I said, you've got hundreds of thousands of different permutations. It's really hard to lock down, and it's an ever-moving feast. But we think we've got the main ones, and it seems to be bared out by the statistics, but we are doing a really robust analysis at the moment as well, Active Travel England. And the team, like I say, my team have taken these on. I'm now the least biggest expert in Active Travel England on these things, but everybody's really looking at them hard and fast, and we might have some new ones. And the latest one that got added was the guardrail one, which was like a tricky one, because I'd certainly had lots of police officers explain the risk of guardrail round junctions and how cyclists can't escape when they get caught up into it. But we didn't have a huge amount of evidence for it. But then, we did get some evidence that TfL did. They did it a couple of times, just looking at the amount of collisions that were reduced by removing guardrail. It was a really robust evidence set, and that's making the case then for it to be a critical issue. On actually, the placement of guardrail could bring on more collisions, because we know by removing guardrail we'll reduce collisions by up to 20% in most scenarios. So by putting that guardrail there, you're inviting collisions. So even if we're not quite sure what all the factors are, it's not as easy as like a left hook. We don't know what all the reasons are, but we do know that the presence of guardrail has this effect of increasing the collisions on an area. So again, we add that in as a new one. We make sure we check all the evidence. I'll stop rambling on a bit now, but that's a potted history of how they all came to be. Have a look on the website to see what they all are. Please use the route check tool. If there's anything that you've experienced that you don't think's covered, you might want to let us know. And it's always easy to get hold of me and our crew, and we're always happy to listen and learn. And thanks for having me back, Roxanne.
Thank you, Brian, and so lovely to have you back, and it's always a masterclass. We've got some applause coming through. Brilliant. Okay, everybody, questions in the Q&A, and let's try and keep them focused on the topic of today, not every question we could possibly have for Active Travel England, because Brian's not responsible for all departments. Okay, ready, Brian? I know you're welcoming the Q&A, and we've got plenty of time. So I will start here with a question from Beth, who identifies as a frustrated local campaigner. So Active Travel England and her organisation identified a critical issue in a major project, reversing out of echelon car parking along seafront. Council and Highways spent a year not answering and saying it's not an issue, and they had every opportunity to change the design and never even tried. So they're playing the long game and trying to build political will, but it's frustrating. And I guess this is a nice case study which aligns with my burning question, which was a bit of, so what? Great, we've identified the critical issue. How do we actually do something about it? Especially is that the design stage before it's built or after something is built? What can we do with this information?
Well, I'm glad you framed it like, because that's the entire job of my team. The spotting it is the easy bit, but it's the finding solution. And basically, in the inspectorate in our team, we just offer help for authorities going, okay, you've spotted that, and it's almost like it's ambivalent of what we think. These are the known things that we think give rise to these collisions. Have you got any? Let's have a discussion about how we might solve it. It might not be solvable, or it might be tricky, it might be outside of the scope, but we can have a bit of a discussion. Really, the route check works off, look at the criticals first, make sure you discuss those. Are there any alternatives we can do? And I do know that scheme by that description quite well. And I will say to the campaigner, that was an enormous amount of conversations and reports and workings trying to find solutions in that area. which I won't get into now because that part of our job at Active Travel England is just to support the local authority officers. We're not there to hang them out to dry. But let's say, let's have a discussion about this. Have you thought about that? They're the highway authority. They get to decide. Our whole job is influence and try and help and come up with solutions. So yeah, there are many solutions. Some of them might be workable, some wouldn't be. You've got to remember the fact that a lot of these critical issues will just be completely standard arrangements that people do, and it's like almost like a surprise when you're pointing out, yeah, like like let's take that lane width one. Like you're looking at design manual for roads and bridges, it says like 12 foot, 3.65 meters. That's how wide a lane is, and then you pick up our guidance to say that is the critically worst width that you can have a lane for cyclists. So like it's tricky. We're resolving it. So you're working against practice, but we do point these things out. We present the evidence. We help them find solutions. Not always possible. And like as the campaigner hinted there, there's lots of factors at play on that particular scheme, which I think I'm picturing, and I've been there and we've tried, and it's not for want of effort to find an easy solution there.
Yeah. And so, Brian, when you say that you're there to help, I'm guessing that is, not everybody can just pick up the phone and call Active Travel England. That's really people in local authorities working there. So all of us campaigners spotting issues all over the country, we don't have a hotline to Active Travel England.
No, we don't. We are there to fundamentally support the local authorities. But the more you ask them, the more you say, well, have you spoke to them? That helps. But I'm not also asking you to inundate your authorities, but just know that we are there. You shouldn't know what we've done or that we even exist, but we're there to help authorities out, and we should get better design outcomes. And we've recorded an enormous amount of improvement in design quality just for the fact that we exist. But yeah, apart from me now, we don't bang on about it too much. But yes, but all the authorities, I will say, every single one that we work with wants to do the right thing and wants to get the optimum solution. That's like a fact. So all these scenarios I'm describing, which seem like ridiculous from a walking and cycling point of view, they've all been done with good intent. But just like, have you got a solution that still works for what they wanted and the outcomes they wanted, but actually works better? Like the Cyclops junction was the classic example. We actually made capacity improvements to junctions by putting that in for cars. So it meant it was really easy and smooth to put a load of them in, and well done to the Cambridges and Manchesters of the world for doing them. So yeah, there are solutions that can help. And once somebody comes up with one, it's another part of our job to go, oh, have you seen what they've done to resolve that? Would that work for you? I can go, here's how you do it.
Brilliant. So our strategy as advocates is to suggest to those contacts at the local authority that there is help for them. Have a chat to Active Travel England. So I will tell my local councillor to call you about my pothole. I'm joking. Okay, let's move on to some other questions. Okay, Steve Cox would like to know, is there any work being done to include near miss and close pass data in road safety research? And he asked because his local council road safety team seem to focus on collisions, not those near misses.
Well, yeah, well, his road safety team will know that the more near misses you've got, the more of an indication that collision's coming. This is one of the ways you pick it up. I mean, thankfully, things like fatalities are rare, so it can be quite difficult to study them. So we're just waiting for a fatality before you do something. You'd be waiting a long time. But if you have a whole bunch of near misses, there's like a duty to act on it. Also, quite a few of the critical safety issues are fed by near miss data. The work that Rachel Aldred did in 2014 of the people that worked on it was really influential in putting some of those things together because we didn't have enough evidence to support it. That one that I mentioned, that near side lane width, was a real tricky one to get the data for, and the near miss data was the closest we had, with so many cyclists reporting like really close passes on like a daily basis on some routes. And we go, well, actually, we've got this evidence that there are these really close passes. Is it associated with any infrastructure? The tricky bit we didn't have out the near miss data was we didn't have the points where it happened, which is the great thing you get about a Stats 19. It can be a little bit fuzzy where they're located, but if you spend a bit of time, you can tend to work out what happened. Whereas you get a bunch of data saying there's loads of near misses. Go, where? Were they on this kind of lane? Were they approaching pinch points? That's the extra bit of data that we don't know. But there should be if there isn't collisions, you can look at an area and look at the near misses that are happening. You can do like the Transport Research Laboratories kind of interaction analysis as well, which I swear by. So you can just go and have a look at something for a few hours, and you get a pretty good feel of what the likely collisions are. You then check that against the actual collisions that are happening. Gone, actually, yeah, we get one of those every 2 years. And actually, we've seen those kind of interactions that might lead to it. We should do something about that. So yeah, it can be tricky because sometimes you can have brilliant safety records because nobody will go anywhere near it. That's the classic thing that they might be missing out on. So if they then decide that that junction that's safe, they want to include it part of a walking cycling network, then the collisions start coming in. Like, it's a tricky one. Then. So yeah, that's the kind of perverse thing. If it looks completely unsafe, everybody's on their toes. You can actually have a really good record. Lots of the things, like we've had coroner's reports in the past saying we've made people feel too safe, entice people to their deaths if people feel comfortable in there.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh my God, if I hadn't painted that, if I hadn't done that, they wouldn't have felt comfortable. They would have known that this is a horrible junction. And that's why I really worry about painting anything through junctions, about doing a full separation in time and space. That's it's a real worry because people think they're on something when they're exposed to the risks. So one to watch out for. But I just think probably that road safety team are a bit more nuanced, but they might just want to say that because there's the things you say when you're responding, and there's what you do in practice. And I've not met like a collision investigation team that doesn't do the sort of thing I'm talking about, that doesn't go out, look at the interactions, how are things performing, like what the likelihood of getting collisions. So they will be doing that, but they might want to say it.
Yeah. Thanks, Brian. Steve, I've got your hand up. Did you want to come back on any of that?
Yeah, based on an interaction I had with the council, we have a major issue at one of our road junctions here, which is a tiny little roundabout with 3 wide roads going into it. And we've been campaigning to get something done, even if it's just simple signage. And I asked if we could put a 1.5 meter warning sign up, and the response was, well, you've not had any accidents there. And they seemed genuinely surprised when we showed them how many near misses had happened, which is what made me suspect that there's something missing. It may be unfair of me to be skeptical, but I genuinely believe that they haven't been using it, and they just purely focus on where we've had accidents.
Well, here's the struggle of their job. Like I talked about this, but like all the variables that coincide. You put the sign up and then a collision happens. Was it because of this extra variable introduced? Were people like distracted by the sign that was new in the area and didn't notice something? You were always really worried about that as a designer, and like say this as a design engineer, there were many sleepless nights, particularly when you just open a scheme that's new. It's going, what about that? What about that one? So everybody will be reluctant to change something if it's kind of all right. But yeah, like what you're doing is the right thing to build up the evidence base. Going, look, we've got all this. It's really distracting people. Is there anything you can do? There are more standard arrangements for this. Can you look at this? And like part of our job will be if they go, any ideas what we could do here? We'll go, oh, have you thought about this, and this? That's where we come into the equation. But it will be like it'll be that reluctance to change one thing. Sometimes you want to like go, actually, we'll do a more standard arrangement that we've seen work elsewhere, that we got the evidence to do it. Otherwise, if you bring in the change, this is where like just to like labour the point a bit, people really struggle to do anything for cycling like 20 years ago because you're like, why are you encouraging people to do something that's dangerous? Well, you're going to get more collisions. And like often quote Bob Davis on this one, they go, what do we want? More cycling collisions. And they go, what, Bob? They go, that means there's more people cycling. But that's the really difficult thing to explain to a road safety auditor. I'm like paraphrasing you there, Rob, Bob, but you did say that to me once, and it's stuck as well, and it's fed into this one. So lots of things. Try and see it from their perspective. Keep giving them the evidence, point it out, have a look for solutions, support them. Is what I'd say.
Thank you.
Right. Well, you've mentioned Bob, so I'll let you in. I'll let you respond and ask your question, Bob. Off you go.
Yeah, I mean, I really uh, feel that the whole of my life has been telling people that danger is different from the number of crashes. And I'm really pleased that Brian, some years ago, said that he'd been influenced by that. And I do really need to point that out to everybody here that very often you're not getting the road traffic collisions. We're not supposed to say accidents. We're not getting the collisions because people are too scared to be out there. So it can contraindicate what you need to do. And I've written about this at length. Just to give one example, the old, very good, by the standards of the day, highway engineer who regretted how he'd done loads of traffic calming because the old deers were coming out across the road and getting knocked down. And he'd made the area safe for people to walk, and he didn't get that he'd actually done something successful. So I really have to just emphasize that. Um, Now you can link it in. One of the ways you can link it in is to use contributory factors, which people like at Transport for London will talk about. So contributory factors are, the things like being hit from behind or being left hooked or right hooked or whatever it is. One thing I just wanted Brian to clarify about was that the left hooks are often fatalities because they're HGVs. So I think that needs to be mentioned. And other than that, I just want to sing my old song, and I'm glad that it did have an effect. And you just have to, be careful about the way you use your words, and you can get through to engineers to some extent if you're careful. But remember that overall picture.
Brilliant. Thank you. Okay, we've had lots of chat about guardrails. I've not been able to read it all, but I've seen it flying past. And then we have a question from Fran, who asks, is a bollard always better than a guardrail if something is deemed necessary? So I'm sure some people will be horrified that you want to take out the protection of a guardrail. So what's that compromise if we do need to put something there instead?
Well, yeah, you got to think. Well, even by putting a bollard, depends. Like, is it a passive safety bollard? What's going to happen if you caught between that? So what's it trying to do? Certainly, people aren't as bad at this anymore. But I'm going to talk about like the main type of guardrail that can be sheep pens. If you say the phrase sheep pen, everybody that's been designing schemes for like 10 years ago. That's what you do. You go, where do you want people to cross? We want them to cross there. So we'll make sure we guardrail all the way down, and then we can't get them straight across. That's going to delay the cars. So we'll get them into a little middle bit. We'll make them all turn around and follow it around, and that's massively annoying. The more you take pedestrians off the design line, the less likely they are to actually use that facility, particularly if they kind of like herded through. And we did call them sheep pens, and they still are in that kind of way. So then, if you're doing that kind of thing, I talked about the collisions of cyclists getting caught into it, like particularly on turns. And Bob's absolutely right on HGVs. That's the main thing. That's the bit that the police shared lots of graphic detail with me about when I was at TFL about that one. But it's also like if you're like me, you've leaped 1,000 pieces of guardrail, one-handed jump. Occasionally been quite drunk where you've done it, catch your foot, end up rolling into the road. I've done that at least 40 times in my life. So maybe I am like a bad example.
Are you a walking critical safety issue?
Yeah. And I go, well, yeah, just think about how many guardrails I've leaped. And you'll see you don't have to go too far to where there's guardrail, particularly if it's in the middle of a central reserve, to see ladies with prams trying to get through the panels around it and picking kids over. There's they don't even know where the nearest crossing is, or it's 50, 100 meters down the road by the time they get their crossing. So it's a really difficult thing to hem people in. Certainly, the evidence we have is that it doesn't seem to do much good pretty much anywhere. Personally, if I was designing a scheme, I'd need to see a really strong gradient, a primary school, and a drop into a volcano to put guardrail in because the evidence is so far against it. But the to put it out as a constant one is it's another signal. There's so many things that it contributes to, but certainly from a driver's point of view, you tend to think, well, people aren't going to step out, and it can be one of those things that encourages more aggressive, speeding behaviour. So you might think it's for safety, but the overall effect it's having on the street. So this thing's a prison, and you're the guard. Go for it. If you're in the car and if you're crossing, you're like your third class. You're trying to find a way past this obstacle someone's put up to stop you getting where you want to get. So it's not a great. If you looked at it just in a pure placemaking point of view, the place looks completely rough with guardrailing. Just pulling out guardrail can have a completely calming effect on an environment. So if you just looked at it from that variable, you get there. Then you get into the fact that you've got like strong metal reinforced things that mean that people can't escape from the carriageway. If like a vehicle gets into their space that pedestrians can't cross where they want to, or they do cross and then they can't get to the other side because they're trapped in between the guardrail trying to find a way around, which we've all seen, and I'm sure you've all seen this week. So there are lots of factors against guardrail. It's a tricky one because you think, well, I'm guarding people, but you're also trapping people, and that's the key bit that you have to think about. So I'm not its hugest fan. Sorry if anybody's from the guardrail company. I think there are uses, but in urban environments, particularly if we can manage to slow the speeds down, I don't really see that it's that effective. Albeit, I will say, just to finish off on a lighter note, because it's been a bit grim. When my consultancy back in the day were looking at guardrail removal in London, we were the first to come up with a methodology and do that. The main complaints we had were from cyclists. They're all saying, "Stop taking away our cycle parking." That was kind of big one. But,
It's true. It's true, actually.
handy for locking your bike too.
Oh no, that is so true, actually. All right, well, we just need to get more but actually, then often bike parking is used as some form of guardrail or bollard often as well, and so yeah, that could be that bike racks could cause the same
Yeah, at least you
effect.
can escape between it. So going back to the bollard one, it's better, but like there are issues with bollards alongside the roads as well. But context is everything. I remember sharing a picture in Manchester where someone had put a set of bollards in on a really broken up footway, and it was about 800 mil behind the bollards. And I was like, this is the first time anybody else been able to walk on this footway for 20 years, because it was always parked up right to the wall on an A road. No one get through. They had to do the bollards. So like it depends what you've got.
Yeah. Again, what's the greater harm? Is it the cars going onto the pavement? Is it, yeah, you've just, that's the decisions we have to make. All right, let's move on from guardrails and bollards. Joe would like to ask, while the talk today has focused on car and cycle collisions, is there any research into pedestrian cyclist or cyclist and cyclist collisions? He's saying he's got some otherwise good infrastructure in Warwick that induces cyclist and cyclist collisions due to narrow width and poor sightlines.
Yeah, so we talked a bit about the pedestrian stuff, and I could have gone into it, but cyclists on cyclists and cycling on pedestrians. Again, it's a really tricky one because ultimately we're going to rest on collision stats, and there just really aren't any. There's certainly not enough to study. It's like almost makes me sound disappointed as a road safety person, but there's just not enough study. So when people are raising issues about that, we do tend to use that like that interaction analysis. So how are cyclists and pedestrians interacting at this point? Let's go and have a look at it. Are they like a near misses, very near misses? Are they actually hitting each other? Now, a cyclist going to a pedestrian could result in fisticuffs. It could result with people being really angry and annoyed, having a big shouting match and go, "Oh my God, these things are the worst." But it's really unlikely for it to result in a hospital collision. Now, they do happen. We have a couple a year, and like there's fatalities. So it's not like we can't take it seriously, but they never seem to be that studyable. So you look at the interaction one and go, okay, we've got like 17 very near misses, 400 near misses a day at this point. We should probably look and do something to maybe separate them or calm it or do it in a different way. The first place I applied this, and give a long answer to this one, but like Wellington Street coming off Waterloo Bridge, for those that know, it's a really London example. But you've got like everybody in the morning, every cycle stage, so every stage of the signals, got 40, 50, sometimes 80 cyclists coming off Waterloo Road, heading for like the footway by the side of where the Lion King's on, heading up to Covent Garden because it's the best route through North London. But the way they used to do it it just looked like a footway. You got people standing there with the maps going, "Oh, where should we go?" Or like which way's Leicester Square? And then you got 80 cyclists all giving a green light to mount the footway at that point. to go, well, you can stand there for like 30 seconds and have enough high level interactions to go, something needs to be done here. And what Westminster did, and this point, was to put asphalt on the cycle bit, so it just looked like a side road. Like, it was a really simple thing. They didn't have to mess with the levels too much, but certainly anybody that was walking along, and you're talking thousands of people an hour walking along there, you could see that there was a road there, and they could see that it was a signal junction, so they're expecting some kind of movement. So all the interactions went away by that simple material change. You know, there's still a few, but it's not to the level of interaction that we had before. So yeah, there's different ways of doing it. So I'm just saying, you use a different approach. You haven't got a large amount of collisions, which is what we'd look at in that kind of situation. So it's not a critical safety issue for us, because we want that direct tie to collisions. Definitely interested in what Bob said, and the evidence is stronger, but the more we can say that direct tie, then we can say we're definitely reducing collisions by doing that. And if it's a kind of weaker connection, then we're just looking at it through the other 150 odd things that we check on every scheme. And we're looking at it that way. Well, you've gone mute for me.
Apologies, because I've got a cold, so I'm muting so I don't cough too much. That brings to mind an example we've had here in Cambridge, and I'm sure others would have experienced this, is where critical safety issues are intentionally implemented in some perverse attempt to make things safer. So intentionally putting cyclists into shared spaces because this will slow them down, or intentionally saying this should be dangerous because the cyclists might slow down, but actually it's just creating more danger and more conflict. So I guess introducing conflict as a safety measure. What's the Active Travel England view on that now?
Yeah, so I think the first way you worded it, no one's doing that. No one's putting in one of the critical safety issues. This thing, like, it makes it highly likely that there'll be a collision, a fatality. No one's
Not intentionally.
What you're talking about now is introducing conflict, but an obvious conflict, which is kind of like a classic kind of shared space kind of approach, where if you've got like let's say that you're in like a home zone, and the cars are all laterally like shifted. So like there's big blocks, and you come up there, and the car faces the other car for a bit. Yeah, brilliant at slowing them down. You could say, "Oh my God, what a dangerous thing to do," but it's obvious what the conflict is, so you do get that kind of a slowing down effect. And it can be a really like effective a traffic calming technique. Things like putting extra parking in. People don't want to hit the wing mirrors, can really slow people down on a kind of narrow street. There are some different things. So if you flip that for cyclists, let's say like I got in a bit of heat for one near Old Street once, where we had a tree in the middle of the cycle track to slow cyclists down because they were going into a quite strongly pedestrianised area to go through. Well, why are you putting that there? Because it's different. Because it's different, and you can see that there's some kind of change of form there, and there's something to think about. But it was the softest, nicest thing we could think about. I will put a tree, but it was right in the middle of the track. And people go, "Why have you done that, you idiot? I could ride into that." They also go, "Well, you're also looking at a tree, and it's slowing you down." So I don't think the intention's what you say it is on that one. I don't know the scheme you're talking about, but they certainly won't want to create more collisions. But they might introduce an obvious conflict to get a psychological effect for the benefit of other users. They might well be doing that. We'd have to look at that.
Yeah, you see skepticism on this face, because I agree with those points you're saying, but I think sometimes it's used to justify really poor design that it isn't actually achieving those
No
aims.
one's trying to do a terrible job.
Not trying to, but they may defend them. They may defend a terrible job. Anyway, we've got the advocate here getting let's just say I've got a lot of skin in the game on that one. But Active Travel England LTN 1/20 helped us turn around the next phase. So it'll be better when they finish it. Right, on to the questions we've got coming in. We won't get through all of them, so I'm making sure I'm prioritizing the ones relevant to critical safety issues. Okay, here we go. How can we get narrow advisory lanes removed when we know they kill more people than having nothing? We've tried locally without success. How can we get obvious things changed? I guess this comes down to the questions about paint versus otherwise. Have we lost Brian? Where's he
No,
gone?
I'm still here. Am I
Oh,
not?
there you are. You vanished off the screen for a bit. Okay.
Yeah, and I think Bob's Wall came up for a while, but I've jumped back in. Um, yes, so on that one, so one, we'd look at what the conditions that people are putting an advisory cycle lane in on. So one, is there enough width for it without car wheels going over it? So would it be covered by the collision from alongside risk? Or like what's the volume that you're mixing with? So if you're in an advisory cycle lane, you're not protected. It's like a fairly high chance that vehicles will be in that space or they'll be doing kind of closer passes than if there wasn't anything there, which is another bit that's the Professor John Parkin bit of research that. So if, once you put that cycle lane in, the cars actually drive closer to the cyclist than if it wasn't there at all. So we know that actually, like you've uh, you've changed one of your variables for the worse by having it there. So the statement you made, like be it like it's dramatic, might well be factually true. But like from our point of view, like the things to do is to point out the critical safety issues. We go, someone's put an advisory cycle in, there's more than 10,000 vehicles. That's going to be tricky. There's going to be people parking it, crossing it, dipping into it, driving closer to it. So your risk of collision from alongside is increased by having it there from not having it. So there's enough evidence to support that. So like there are occasions when the advisory cycle lanes and mandatory cycle lanes, just the paint stuff, can have an effect. It can be useful. I I'm not a huge fan of them either, I will say. And like certainly shout out to London Cycling Design Standards when I was just basically didn't even want to mention cycle lanes as an option. It was all about what that near side lane width was, and you had to put something there. Did you have enough space to have even put it there? And it was more about protected or nothing on that kind of approach. LTM 120 didn't go as hard as that, albeit I did ask at the time. But yeah, I think there's like a really strong evidence base for saying, actually, think about this cycling you're putting in. Is it doing more harm than good? It can be like we used to think it was great, like that majority of cars would stay out of that space so you could undercut and show how quicker it was getting around by bike. But you're also in like the least defensive position and the position least likely to be spotted by the driver who's on the other side of the car in this one. So there are issues, and I talked a bit before about the approach to ASLs from on that near side lane. So I my general rule that I say to my team and get to spot out, like if someone's going to pin you over to the left, they've got to protect you. So that's not the most defensive position to be in. You're in the worst position defensively, so they've got to protect you in that position, or don't suggest anybody goes over there. That's the way I take it. And certainly, if you're approaching the junction and you've pinned someone to the left, you've got a duty to protect them through the junction then, because again, they're in the least defensive spot with the poorest visibility, and they're open to the most risk. So try and sort that junction out, or don't do any of it. Just let people ride defensively and find their own line. Like as soon as you start saying that, yeah, I think you should go there, you've got a duty to protect them, as far as I'm concerned.
Ah, so maybe we should just take out all traffic lights and let everyone go for it. Maybe not quite. But there is a case for that in certain circumstances that the less control you try and put in, people actually can work it out and make their own decisions about what.
But then they'd be in the obvious conflict argument that you were talking about hating before. Like
Yeah.
when there's
No,
an
I
obvious
was,
conflict,
yeah.
people will slow.
I feel like I feel I've got some trauma around this because I'm certainly not making it up out of nowhere. I think that's a sit down over a
No,
beer and
we
have
can
a chat.
recognise it.
But also not my problem in 3 days. Right. We are going to start wrapping up. Now, I've not asked all the questions, but I've just been really specific about sticking to ones around critical safety issues rather than other Active Travel England policies today. But if there's anything that we see a theme, we'll see if we can get someone to come and talk about the other themes. But I thought that this was interesting from Colchester. Will says a FYI for you, Brian, that Colchester Cycling Campaign is using ATA guidelines to request by the new local plans that developers no longer get away with cursory cycle studies. For example, NCN 51. Running 1 kilometre away. But he's asking that developers produce a study using Active Travel England advice within a 2 to 3 kilometre radius. So I guess I thought we could sort of round up this chat today with, what is that advice that we can take from Active Travel England? You've got this study. What else have you got that helps us really shape the built environment as it's emerging?
Yeah, so look at the planning page on the website. I mean, I mean, I could kiss the person that just said that. That's exactly what we want to see happen, push the developers. So there's a huge amount of guidance from the planning side. I focused a little bit on the street design engineering bit from my end. There's a huge amount of stuff on our website that's all designed to help that aim, like to tell developers what good looks like, how to do it, how to judge it, what help's offered from our side, what to look for. So yeah, like fill your boots and turn up, slap
Yeah.
pieces of paper on the table and say, why don't you do it like that? That'd be great.
Yeah, and we'll line up for your smooch from Brian. Brilliant. Right, now let's not wrap up just yet because I should have mentioned this earlier on, but it's our annual fundraising drive. So if you'd enjoyed the session today, all the other sessions we've been putting on for years, we all do it voluntarily, but there is a small cost to make sure we can have the technology running to accommodate everyone. For example, if we didn't have a bit of funding in the bank for Zoom, we wouldn't have actually been able to fit everybody in today. We would have been capped at 100. So it costs us about 650 quid a year. And we've popped some links into the chat, and I'm sure Elizabeth will pop another link in for us. But if anyone could spare a few quid, price of a coffee or a pint or whatever it is, that will absolutely help us keep Active Travel England going for another year. And a huge shout out and thank you to everyone who donated today. We're at 55% of our goal already, and I think the email only went out this morning. So we've only got another 300 and something to go. I see things coming in already. So thank you everyone for donating already or in the future. Much appreciated. Thank you, Brian, so much for coming and speaking with us today and having a lovely, robust debate about critical safety issues. Looking forward to seeing what you come up with next and come and talk to us about. But we certainly appreciate you sharing your time and expertise. And thanks, everyone, for joining us today and all your great questions. We'll see you next week. I meant to tell you all who's coming next week. Next week, we've got Lee Grevner on curbside management. We love talking about curbs and curbside management. So Lee Grevner from Grid Smarter Cities is coming to talk about all things curbside management, the demands of the curbside, potential conflicts, and how the current arrangements don't do enough to manage curbside activities and how this can undermine public realm or highway schemes that seek to promote active travel. We can ask about guardrails again. So thanks everyone. Looking forward to seeing you next week. I will try and curb my enthusiasm. Bye.